Hi, welcome to LinkedIn Live. And again, I'm so super excited to have the guest today in William Arruda. Many of you may know William or of William anyway. And if you read his bio, it would say that he's a dynamic. I can certainly attest to that. Motivational speaker and the world's leading authority on the topic of personal branding. And I think that this is so interesting that what you say, William, in your on your website is that what makes you unique makes you successful. How did you come to that realization?
Yeah, well, first, Magda, I just want to thank you for having me on your incredible podcast that people are glued to. So I'm thrilled to be here. Yeah, and you know what? We live in a world that's totally conformist. We are taught from a very young age. This is how we do this and behave this way, and your teachers tell you behave this way, and your manager says, oh, this is how we do things here. And what happens is we believe that the path to success is paved with conformity. And in fact, the most successful and the happiest people on earth are the people who are willing to be their unique, authentic, incredible, amazing, different, irreverent selves. And that's really what that's about. And it's kind of I used to call it like permission to be yourself, but I really think it's a mandate to be yourself so that you
Mm.
can be successful and fulfilled.
So how in the world electrical engineer becomes a personal branding guru? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, you know what? And this totally connects with personal branding. If I had had a personal branding consultant way back when I was choosing my major at school, they would have said, what do you love to do? What do you think you have something you can contribute to? But I didn't get any of that advice. And, so what I thought was, I thought you go to school, you do the hardest thing you can think of. And electrical engineering was the hardest thing I could think of. And it was exceptionally hard. And I'm probably the world's worst engineer. It's really lucky that I didn't do any engineering when I got out. But quickly, I found myself in marketing at high tech companies. And I started feeling like that was something I really loved, this concept of differentiation and understanding what separates you from competitors and whatnot. And that's where I kind of found my path toward personal branding.
Mm-hmm. And as you know, ICF is a very global organization, and I know that you had a chance of working not only with but being located in the geographies other than North America. What insights did you gain from that particular experience?
You know what? I tell everyone, I lived in London and Paris, London for 2 years
Right.
and Paris for 6. I tell everyone that was my biggest learning experience of my entire life, more than all of the education that I've had, everything. When you are just dropped into a place and you don't, especially Paris, and you don't speak the language and the culture is completely different and your job has actually not the same job that you had, you really need to, I think, be incredibly self-reflective and kind of, figure out what's going on, and you pay attention and you listen and you look. And I learned more about people, about relationships, I learned about how people all over the world are a lot more alike than we think we are. And
Mm.
I also learned that everyone in the world has something different and unique in the world to offer. And that's a pretty powerful thing. I will tell you that the biggest thing I learned was kindness. Um,
Mm.
when I was living in London, I was going to move to Paris. The people I worked with in the UK were like, "Don't move to France; they're going to hate you. It's really awful, and it's hard to break in, and it's going to be miserable." And I got to Paris, and I have to tell you, people went out of their way to be incredibly kind and welcoming and open to me, and I just best learning experience of my life.
So you work with individuals. You also work with the organizational brands. So what's the difference, or is it?
You know what? It is the exact same process that I use for
Mm.
personal branding, I use with companies. The first step is know, figure out what your brand is, right? What separates you from others, what's compelling to the people that you're looking to influence. The second phase is show, tell the world your story, and maybe individuals will use LinkedIn and their LinkedIn bio to do that. Companies might use other things. And then grow is how do you make more and more people, the ideal people for you, aware of who you are and the value that you deliver. So the process is really the same.
Mm.
The there are nuances obviously as you move through, but it's really about getting clear about who you are and making sure that the right people know that.
So working with the organizational brands, and ICF had the pleasure of working with you on our rebranding several years back. Um, how do you align the brand of people working within the company with the brand of the company? And is it important?
It's a great question. It's one of the biggest challenges, right? You have a company, IBM has 330,000 employees or something like that, right? And part of the when I used to go to companies and say, "Hey, I want to come in and brand your people," they would say, "We don't want you to. We don't need 330,000 brands in the marketplace. We have one brand, right?" The challenge is. You cannot expect every one of your employees to really connect with your values one for one. You can't expect them to really fall in line. And if you do, what you will end up with is conformity, which is the enemy of innovation. If you want to
Exactly.
innovate, you need diversity, right? And diversity of thought, of experience, of attitude, of action, all of that. So it's this really gentle kind of balance of kind of connecting loyalty. Like this organization gives me the opportunity to do amazing things, to create great stuff, and I get to do it in a way that's authentic to me, right? And
Mm.
as long as we're all focused on the same mission, but how I do it to achieve that mission is as unique as I am, then both brands can live harmoniously.
Hmm. Hmm. I also recall when we were working together that you several times reminded us, and mind you, coaches want to make peace with everybody, right? That the strong brand attracts and repels equal number of people. What kind of reaction do you get to that statement? Because I do remember that when you first said that, I was like, but we want to be liked by everybody, right? So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it is one of the biggest challenges people have because most people, right? There are some people who have actually built their brands about becoming like hated by like a
Right.
community. And I won't mention any names, but maybe people's minds can go there. But most of us walk around and we want people to like us, right? We have an ego, and we kind of want to connect with people. And so the idea of attracting and repelling is not to necessarily to design people to repel you, but it is to be. I am so committed to what I believe, and I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be comfortable if everyone doesn't necessarily agree with me, right? And just because they don't agree with you, it doesn't mean that they don't respect you, because they will likely appreciate what you do and what you achieve, but they don't necessarily connect. And I'll tell you the biggest place where I learned this: Oprah. Now, I don't know about you, but I love Oprah. I want Oprah to be my friend. I love what she's been able to accomplish in her life. I love that
Mhm.
she's all about empathy and humanity. When a lot of her talk show competitors were exploiting their guests, she was hugging hers, and so
Mhm.
I really love her. And once, a long time ago, it's like 17 years ago, I Googled "I hate Oprah," and oh my gosh, there are a lot of people who don't like Oprah, who don't only not like her, they really don't like Oprah. And I
Mhm.
learned that that you have to be okay with that, and you have to get a little bit uncomfortable with it, because the more you're willing to be yourself and to take decisions that go along with that, the more there will be people who will disagree.
Right. Again, back to that conformity, not to be a conformist, right? Be authentic self. So you are a frequent contributor, senior contributor, I think, to Forbes, and I love Forbes for that matter. So one of your recent articles spoke to the 10 C's of how to differentiate your brand. Do you care to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I call it the 10C test. I think people always ask me, I mean, do I have a strong brand, and how do you
Mm,
know? And one of the ways to measure your brand presence and power is by evaluating it against the 10 C's. And let me just pick three C's in particular. Clarity.
mm,
This is I will tell you, a lot of people, when they think personal branding, they want to do the sexy stuff. They want to have social media profiles and be in video and be speaking on stages. But if you aren't clear about who you are and who you're not, and what separates you from everyone else who does what you do, um,
mm.
all of that other stuff is never going to happen, and it's not going to happen in a big or positive or powerful way. So the clarity piece is first. And by the way, I talked to lots of coaches about this, because you know how many people tell me I'm a leadership coach. I said, I'm like, tell me what kind of coach you are. I'm an executive coach, I'm a leadership coach, I'm a career coach, I'm a life coach, I'm an ADHD coach. And you know what, there's a whole boatload of other coaches who focus on the same thing.
Sure.
What makes you stand out? So that clarity is key. The second one that's really, really important is consistency. You
Oh,
need to always be that. You can't one day be this and the next day be that. People can't. They don't have the bandwidth to be able to figure out what you're about. You need to, if you're consistent about who you are and how you message that, people will connect with you. And I think that's a really important point. And we kind of want to, we're like, oh, I'm going to change all the time. I think the consistency piece is key. I say, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Magda, but I'm going to write a country music song called "Don't Be a Changin' When You Should Be a Samin'." So stay tuned for that. Everyone will hopefully hear it on their favorite podcast
let's go to Nashville,
or
right?
iTunes channel. And then the third one is constancy.
Mhm.
Strong brands are always visible, available, and valuable to the people who are making decisions about them. They don't go into hiding, right? And a lot of people, this is where social media people get into trouble with that, is they'll be like crazy in social media, posting, and then they disappear for 2 months, and then
Mm,
they come back. People need that regular visibility and being able to connect. Look at you, Magda. You've committed to, you have this huge job running all of ICF, and yet you've committed to these regular, right? You have the regular podcasts, you have your regular communications that you write periodically at Forbes, so that people are constantly getting your thought leadership around leadership, right? Which is what I kind of what where I, you can tell me if you see this different, but I feel like your thought leadership is all around this new modern authentic leader, right? And that's the stuff we see over and over and regularly. That's how we build a relationship with you. And
mhm.
so yeah, the constancy piece is the third one.
So let me, it's not a challenge, it's the curiosity about the consistency, because I also happen to use the tool that you developed, the Reach 360, and I've done
Hmm.
it twice so far, and probably, oh, I want to say there was at least a 5, maybe 7 year gap between the first and the second, and they came out different.
Hmm.
So I took it as I'm evolving, and that's a good thing. But with what you said is, I'm just curious, is it, well, because we do, right? We do have to evolve, otherwise we are in a complacency category. So how do we evolve without losing that consistency of our brand?
A excellent point. And so all brands evolve, they have to stay relevant. And so everything changes. We change, everything around us changes, the workplace changes. And if we're not evolving, right? If people, coaches right now, if they're not taking advantage of AI, they're going to be
Right.
reluctant relics, right? Instead of relevant change agents. So we need to always be conscious of what's going on and evolve our brand so that we remain relevant.
Mm,
Otherwise, we quickly become obsolete, right? That's brand evolution, not revolution, right? And
revolution.
I think there's a big difference, right? Is I can't today be like all about building relationships and being really excited about people. And then tomorrow, just go off the map and say, I'm just going to go live in a hut and not talk to anyone for 3 years or whatever. Right. What happens is our brands evolve, and it's great that you saw changes, because if your brand doesn't evolve, you need to take that step back and say,
Mm,
should my brand evolve? Like, am I, 7 years is a long time in the
right.
history of the world. Look what's happened with you in 7 years. You took ICF from one organization to be five separate organizations. You've done all this stuff, and all of that, though, I will say, is probably connected to the same core of who you are, and your thoughts around leadership, and your thoughts about relevancy, and your desire to keep the ICF as the number one global coaching organization in the world, right? And so you had to evolve to maintain that, but that's kind of that, maybe your purpose and a lot of other elements of who you are, and how people interact with you. That part has stayed the same.
Yeah, that's really very interesting, and I think maybe reassuring to people that exactly you do need to evolve. You don't have to go through the revolution. Evolution is good, and just make sure that you know your authentic self. Back to your original statement about uniqueness, that makes you successful. You mentioned a little bit ago that you work with many coaches. So. Um, what's what attracts you to working with professional coaches, and is it cool?
Yeah.
Is it cool working
How much time do you have? Uh,
with
no, you know what? I will tell you. So when I started in personal branding, uh, nobody else was doing personal branding, and nobody
Mm,
knew what personal branding was, and zero people in the world wanted to buy any of it. So I went from, I had a team of 42 people when I left my job, and then I was by myself. This before people worked at home, working at home, trying to build this thing called personal branding. And I would tell people what I did, and they would say, "Oh, you're a coach." And I'd say, "No, I'm not a coach. I'm a personal branding consultant." And so after a while of hearing this, and I didn't even know what coaches were. This was back in 2001. And I didn't know what a coach was. And so I said, let me check this out. And what comes up? ICF, right? And I think that there were, like, I don't know, 700 coaches that were members or something, really, really small number of coaches. But I didn't know. So I joined the ICF back then, and I got involved in the communications committee. And to say, like, I need a community of people, and I'm lonely, and I started to see, like, oh my God, this thing coaching is but, like, it's really out there, like helping people. Every person in the world can be like a pro athlete and have someone who can help them be more successful, regardless of what it is, what success is to them. And I thought, this is just like kind of stuff for me. So I was super excited, and that's how I got involved in the ICF way, way, way back, and started to really connect with coaches. And then I saw something, and this, um, is coaches weren't necessarily so good, and this is not a negative statement, but at marketing themselves and at getting business. Coaches love coaching, and most of them, they're like, I had this thing called marketing and branding I don't like at all. So that's how I started connecting the branding stuff with the coaching. And then, as you pointed out earlier, I got to work on the brand of the ICF. And then we built this incredible program called the Business Development Series, which has been, I don't want to say it's your most successful program, because I'm partial, but it's like this wildly successful program where coaches join, and they learn how to build their brand so that they get the business stuff that they need to be able to be the best coaches, right? Because coaches can only change the world one person at a time, is if they have full practices of people who really need their services. So I'll stop there, because I could go on and on and on that.
well, exactly. You said earlier that people would say I'm an executive coach, I'm a leadership coach, but what makes them unique, right? We have 60 plus thousand members around the globe. We talk a little bit about the cultural differences as well. So it's not necessarily still a crowded place. When you take the ratio of a coach to a population, we still have ways to go. Um, but what do you think people need to pay, coaches need to pay attention when they develop their brand, so that they can stand out, and at the same time, not to overstate, right? This is even a part of our code of ethics. You cannot make statements about your qualifications, qualities, skills if they are not true. So where's the line? Where's the line between marketing language and the uh, maybe bringing a potential client closer to the person a coach is?
Yeah, a really, really good question. Before that though, I just want to acknowledge something you said. So I started this last my response to your last question with, I think there was 700 or so coaches, and now you just said there's 60 some thousand members of the ICF. So I just want to acknowledge you for building the most successful professional association in the world, because and this is something I know, all the other professional associations are going to you to find out how did you do it, because all these professional associations are losing members,
A
right,
lot of
in
them do.
droves, and
Yeah.
the ICF is going like crazy out of control. So bravo for that. And now that there are 63,000 coaches, even though, compared to the world's population, it's not a big number. You're competing against a lot more people. So you really need to be thoughtful. And there's a few, can I tell you the three things coaches mess up? Three, or the 7,000, but I'll start with three. Number one, no clearly defined niche, right? I think coaches think, there are billions of people in the world, and I could coach every one of them, right? I don't need subject matter. I would really be good at coaching every one of them. So why limit my audience? And the problem with that is, to be visible to billions of people, you need the budget the size of Coca-Cola, which is in the billions, to get your message to those people. So finding your own niche of people that fit at the Venn diagram intersection of, I have something valuable to offer these people. They're really going to dig what I have to offer, and I can uniquely send a message to them, right? If you're at that, then when you send a message to these people, they hear it and it's like, wow, I want to connect with this person. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, they offer coaching, and some of them will say, you know what, I'm a coactive coach, or I'm a coach you coach, or whatever. That still puts you in a group of huge numbers of coaching. Every coach has their own intellectual property, their process, their structure, the way they like to work with their clients. So what you need to be selling is your unique branded version of coaching. Are you Starbucks or Pete's or Dunkin' Donuts or Cafe Nero or Cafe Republic, right? What's your unique offer? That's the second thing, I think coaches don't necessarily do. And the third thing is, they don't have this regular way of communicating and interacting with the people who could potentially become clients, because they they do an amazing job. They stay focused on their people, but you need to constantly be filling the pipeline with new clients to have. We talked about the business development series. In the business development series, that's what we work on, right? How do you get those three things in order so that you start to attract opportunities? Because most coaches are never going to love sales and marketing, but if you can get people to come to you, right, that's the ideal. And so that's the kind of stuff we get to work on.
That's fantastic. And the BDS, we call it BDS, Business Development Series. We're going to have two runs next year, one in February, I want to say, and the other one in June, or March and June. And they are focusing on newer to business and more established coaches, which I think is another really, really interesting point, because when you're in a business for a long time, you may develop these blind spots, right? You're successful, you're doing well, and that relevancy piece may be a little bit tricky at that point.
Yeah, and and so, by the way, so first I just want to acknowledge you hired a really big deal head of learning, Karen Bernstein, and
I did.
she is the one who said, you know what, business development, it's been wildly successful for the organization forever, and guess what? it's not 100% relevant to all our members, because it's often really great for new people who are coming in, really trying to establish their business, or maybe you've been in coaching for a couple of years and you really haven't sorted all that out right. And what she said is, this year, let's create a whole version of it that is specific to seasoned coaches, because seasoned coaches have a whole bunch of different problems, right? Do I need to pivot and do something different? Do I want to build new kinds of offerings? Do I want to take my intellectual property and apply it to new things? Do I want to move from one kind of coaching and add another kind of coaching, right? So they're thinking about very different things from coaches who are maybe like, maybe I need a little more clarity about my target audience. Maybe I haven't 100% defined what my intellectual property is. So what Karen did, and it's absolutely brilliant, is let's start in February with the new stuff. And then those folks will be ready and they can join in June. And then let's also take the folks who are seasoned coaches who we haven't been really talking to in the business development series, and let's make something that's available to them starting in June. So again, thank you for hiring such amazing high level
Lucky me, lucky
senior
me.
leaders to make this stuff happen. Because now, because and I tell you this, and I'm not, this is a true thing. It's the favorite thing I look forward to every 2 years is the business development series, and now I get to do two. So so I'm jump up and down thrilled about all of that.
So I actually think that the program that we will offer next year is especially relevant because COVID really changed a lot of things about not coaching per se maybe, but the delivery methods, right? The arrangements, the engagements, but also as we talk about it, this new this the desire, maybe not new, but a desire for a different type of leadership. So the coaches are facing, I think, maybe a different demand from their clients, which may suggest or require certain level of adjustment to their brand as it existed so far.
Yeah, and here's the great thing. Here's another thing that I've seen with coaches is they've worked really hard building. Maybe some of these 700 coaches way back when they've done a great job, and they have full businesses, and they have
Mm.
relationships with clients, and all of that has been great. I think they have more assets that they haven't been leveraging. Right?
Uh,
They haven't applied their intellectual property to different things. They haven't found ways to make money while they sleep. Because if you're a coach, right, you're limited by how much you can charge for each session, and how many sessions you can do, right? And
right.
time is our enemy. We can't make more of it. So what coaches, there's all this opportunity, like opportunity to make more, to make their coaching available to more people, and
Mhm.
to make more money for their practices by leveraging all these assets that maybe they've built, but they're not necessarily leveraging yet.
Yeah, so all the more reasons to revisit the positioning and the brand. We're running out of time as always.
No,
Uh,
no.
but I wanted to close with I think it was a bonus C in your recent Forbes article, and it was courage.
Yeah.
So what you've done with your career was plenty courageous. Some probably thought you were maybe not stable when you made that decision exactly. But um, many people coming into coaching have to make that courageous step, and then many clients do are nudged to take courageous steps during their coaching journey. So, what would be your parting comment, advice, suggestion around courage to our listeners?
Yeah, and you give me too much credit. I don't know that I had courage. I think I didn't know how hard it was going to be going from an entrepreneur to being. And so, I mean, if someone said this is how it's going to be, I would have been like, do I want it? And I probably would have done it, but with a little bit more reticence. I think the thing about courage is, um, we we pay too much attention to how other people perceive us, to how we want other people to perceive us, to what seems to be the norm. And so we're a little unwilling to take those risks that are actually the risks that are going to feed our soul and help us live our purpose. And so I think, and it takes courage to stand out, right? To be your when everyone else is doing this, and all of a sudden it feels uncomfortable. And so, and I know coaches do this with their clients. They help their clients take reasonable risks. And I don't know that they necessarily jumping from the corporate world to becoming a coach is taking a big risk, or going out of college. I know you have coaches now who come right from school and they become coaches, which is amazing. What like the evolution of coaching. I think that you need to give yourself that end of the day little bit of, all right, you know what, you did something courageous today, and bravo, pat on the back. And what's the courageous thing you're going to do tomorrow? Because I do think you can take little mini courageous steps that make you much more comfortable taking bigger steps to be more courageous.
Wow, quite a closing. Thank you so much, William. That was a pleasure and a delight to have you as a guest. So thank you again for joining us today.
Magda, I would talk to you anytime you find time in your calendar. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.